with so much debate around the technique of tennis. Who has the perfect technique? What is the perfect technique? What is the role of technique? We thought we'd dive into what the role of technique is, what is a perfect technique, and what should we be looking for in our players to make sure that they have the right fundamentals to be able to play any surface, any opponent at any time. Check it out.
So as you can see here, we've got 4 videos of 4 of the world's best female players: Garcia, Swiatek, Pliskova, and Katie Boulter. And they've all got, or about to hit a forehand, and they've all got a very different forehand. And I think it's important to note the style differences, but also to understand the similar concepts and the biomechanics that are probably the same across the board. So when we look at the take back and we look at the start of the swing, you can see they're all very different. So, from a lower body perspective, you've got Pliskova who's taller, slightly higher center of gravity. Generally, the shorter players, obviously lower to the ground, need to utilize their legs to drive up the ball a little bit more. But what you'll see different is you'll see where the hands may start. So, all 4 of the players, if you can see here, all have different starting points with their hands. So you've got Garcia, who's both hands on the grip, has a forehand grip with a bottom hand, has a backhand grip top hand. Same here with Pliskova, she's on the grip. Katie Boulter is a little bit different in that she has a slight separation between bottom hand, top hand. But then you've got Swiatek up here, who's got almost one hand on the throat of the racket, one hand on the grip. So they all start very differently, and it's obviously very different in terms of the way that they take the racket back. Now, if you think of where the hand separation comes in, so if you look at Pliskova's still got her left hand almost on the grip and it's past the back shoulder, whereas Garcia was one that really releases the racket head early. So it's a very different starting point and focuses more on the dominant arm being the one to take the racket back. So everyone will look very different in terms of style and in terms of technique. Now, a lot of parents will come to me as a coach and say, we've got to work on my child's forehand technique, for example. But what does that actually mean? Because as you can see, like you can even see here, the differences in elbow position of Swiatek being closer in, whereas Pliskova's is slightly higher, same as Garcia, whereas Katie Boulter's probably about halfway between Swiatek and the other two. So they're all very different in terms of their positions. They've all got different grips. They've all got slightly different stances. Their left arm, so you've got really straight here from Garcia, where you've got really bent here from Swiatek. As you go through the swing, what you're going to find is that, we get to impact, we've got a really, really bent elbow here. This one here, Garcia gets a bit close to the ball, hard to judge. But you can see Swiatek's head's already looking down the court. She's trying to see, where the ball is going to go, what's going to happen up that end. Katie Boulter's head is very, very still on the impact point. She doesn't really move too much. Garcia is very similar. So they're all very different in style. You look even at the finish point. So you've got more of an Eastern grip with Pliskova finishing above the shoulder, same as Garcia. Whereas you've got Swiatek's racket finishing more towards the left pocket or the opposite pocket. So the differences are there and we can see them. But what is technique? So for me, it's very dependent on the incoming ball. So what is the incoming ball giving us and allowing us to do? Is it a fast, low ball? Is it a slow ball? Do I have more time? Is it a deep ball or a short ball? Is it in the middle of the court or is it wide? So the incoming ball will determine what we can or can't do. In a lot of cases, the physiology of a player, so the height, the strength, can play a really big role in what we do. The grip is a massive factor. So you see, different grips will look very differently on swings and they'll have different effects. So Eastern grips are a flatter based shot, whereas your Western grips will have a bit more shape, a bit more spin. The intent plays a big role in technique. So what is your intent on the ball? Am I trying to flatten it out? Am I trying to hit high and heavy spin to push them back? Am I trying to get some width? So depending on what you do or what your intent is will depend on the stroke production itself and how that is affected by your intent. Your court position. So what are you trying to do from the court position you're in? Is the ball low? Is the ball high? Do I have time? If I've got time, I'll have a bigger swing. If I've got no time, I have a shorter swing. So when we talk technique, I think it's really important that we don't get caught up in the look of it, because everybody will look different depending on, obviously, as we spoke about, physiology, grip, height of the athlete, the incoming ball, the intent. So don't get caught up in the look of it, but I think it's really important to understand that there are fundamental keys to making sure that your swing paths are good. You obviously got to have good perception. You've got to be able to read the ball, hit the ball in the right strike zone. You've got to be able to obviously get position and have your legs low and balanced. The balance part of it's really critical. You want to have a nice little turn of the shoulders, which we call a unit turn, to enable the body to rotate through impact. So there are fundamentals that we can really make sure that are there. But I think that in terms of style, we don't want to look like somebody else. What we want to do is we want to have efficiency with our stroke production. We want to have consistency in what we do. And also, technique is about trying to prevent injury. Is the technique right to be able to prevent injury and have good effectiveness on the court? So, as a coach, that is my main priority, and ensuring that a player is able to adapt is one of the key things about stroke production. No matter what a stroke looks like, can they adapt to different balls, different surfaces, different opponents, to be able to handle the rigors of tennis, which is a week-to-week, different player, different environment kind of a sport. And it's a sport that requires us to read, move, and perceive a ball. It's a send-receive kind of a sport, so we need to make sure that our players are equipped to handle those situations and to be more adaptable no matter who they play and where they play.